Hello, I'm Bob Nunley. Welcome to RL Nunley Rodmakers. Today we're going to do a quick tutorial on how to use my bluing formula, the RL Nunley bluing formula. A quick history on the solution. In the past I've used what is well known as the Payne formula or the Dave LeClaire formula. The only problem I ever had with it is that it's dangerous. It does contain an arsenic compound, and if you leave it open near a piece of metal equipment like your lathe, overnight it will develop rust spots on your latheways. So I wanted to put together a bluing solution that was safe for the user and safe for the equipment around them. And this is it. Nothing fancy, no high dollar packaging, no big pre-printed labels, just a small bottle, 8 ounces, of a bluing solution that has virtually no shelf life. Used properly, this solution will give you a beautiful blue-black finish or an off olive green finish similar to some of the old Heddon rods. The key to it is that it's versatile. It will do nickel, silver, and brass, and bronze, and steel. Now it won't do stainless steel or aluminum, but there are other products out there that do a much better job on those. But if you're making your own guides of bronze or nickel silver or mild steel or spring steel, music wire, whatever, then you can blacken those with this bluing solution. It's just a matter of submerging them for about 60 seconds and rinsing them in cold water. So now we're going to go to the bench and see how this works in real life. Now today I'm not going to blue a ferrule or a piece of reel seat hardware per se. I'm just going to blue a piece of my nickel silver stock tubing that I use to make the ferrules. There are many ways you can start this as far as putting the finish on it. One is to use a fine grit sandpaper. In this case, a piece of 1500 grit sandpaper to clean it off, get the natural film that develops on it from just sitting around the shop out, and put a nice sheen to it. Now, this may not be necessary with pre-manufactured ferrules like CSI or Rush River rods, but when I make my own ferrules, this tubing has been sitting around for years and it has a bit of a dull finish to it. So 1500 grit paper will put a good enough finish on it to blue it. However, if you want a super fine finish, you can take 4/0 steel wool or 2000 grit or 3000 or 5000 grit paper and put a real fine finish on this nickel silver. Now this is almost a polished finish, and if you want, you can take polish and actually polish it out to even a brighter finish. Now this bottle of solution that I'm using here is part of an 8-year-old mix that I have that I've used around the shop. If you'll look, there's a lot of residue in the bottom of this. That's from pieces of metal and patina flaking off over time, but that's about an 8-year buildup. If that begins to bother me, I'll simply filter it through a paint strainer or something else and get all those pieces out of there, but they do not affect the way this bluing solution works. Now that you have a decent finish on the nickel silver, or the finish that you want, it's time to clean it. I clean this with acetone. I just simply swish it around in a little acetone, get it good and wet, dampen a Bounty paper towel, and I use Bounty because there's no sizing used in their process, therefore no silicone or contaminants to get on your nickel silver and cause smudges and prints, and I wipe it down really well. Now I take a dry part of that same Bounty paper towel and buff off the excess nickel silver. That way any contaminants that were in the acetone will come off and you'll have a good clean surface that you can blue. Now what I have done here is poured a little bit of the bluing solution into a clear plastic cup. That's not necessary. I usually blue my parts right in this bottle. However, I want you to be able to see on this video how the color changes on the metal. You can watch this and you can do it by what you see visually, what you like, and you can also just time it. I generally time this, but to be honest, the timer's on that phone right there that's taking this video, and I can't access my phone and the timer at the same time, and I'm a little bit too lazy to get up around the shop and look for my timer. So here we go. I've cleaned this, I've wiped it down with acetone, I've got the finish that I want on it, and now I'm going to stick it in this solution, and I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to leave it in there and watch it for just about 45 seconds to a minute. Yeah, I can already see it starting to make a color change. It's kind of a brownish color right now, which isn't what I'm looking for. It gets darker and darker the longer you let it set. It's getting to kind of a dark brown, still not what I want. I'm gonna swish it around, make sure no air bubbles collect. If an air bubble collects on it, it will leave an unblued spot on the nickel silver. I think you can probably see in the video that it's starting to change colors. I'll lift it out so you can see the color change. All right, it's getting down to a kind of a gray black now. You know what? It's a little bit lighter than what I want, and I'm getting some streaks from taking it in and out. But I'm gonna go ahead here in about another 10 seconds and take it out and set it in cold water to stop the process. This is very important. I have a cup sitting over here to the side that is filled with nothing but cold tap water, and the cold tap water stops the patina process. Okay, let's stop there. Now I'm just going to swish it around in that tap water. That's not necessary. If you're doing ferrules or guides or butt caps or sliding bands, you can just throw them in this and let them sit there. The cold water will stop the process. The reason I swish them around, the inside of this tubing has the formula in it too, and I want to make sure that there aren't any air bubbles in there holding the formula in place that will let it eat at the nickel silver. Because over time, if you leave it in there, it will eat the metal. Okay, after I get it out of the water and have stopped the process, then I'm simply taking a dry paper towel, and a lot of people like to use tissue paper because it's kind of almost like a really super fine polishing paper, and buffing off any excess, any loose residue, anything else. And when I'm finished, I have a nice deep blue-black finish on this piece of nickel silver. Okay, now let's go backwards. Let's say that this isn't exactly the color you wanted. Let's say it has a blemish in it, or a spot, or a fingernail where you touched it with your finger and left a fingerprint and body oil on the nickel silver. Easy. Take steel wool or sandpaper, buff it back off, start the process again. Now, what I'm using is an oil-free sandpaper. This sandpaper, or excuse me, steel wool. This steel wool doesn't have any oil in it, and it's a little bit more expensive than what you buy at Lowe's or Home Depot, but it's great for rod making because, as we all know, varnishes and finishes hate oil. Okay, so I have re-polished that. I'm going to re-clean it in the acetone, and I don't have to get carried away with scrubbing it as long as I get the body oils off of it, which I haven't touched it with my hands, so shouldn't be a big deal. Get all the residue out of the inside. We don't want any contaminants in or bluing. Okay, so we're polished out, we're clean, we're dried well, and we're going to go right back into the bluing. This time I'm going to stand this straight up and down in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can see it starting to change colors. It's blackening really fast. Let's take it out and see what we've got. Now that was a real short, about a 20-second dwell time. With that 20-second dwell time, I get that kind of greenish blue finish that Hedden had. Now let's don't even repolish. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Let's try it at that and see what we get. Well, with an additional 20 seconds, we get kind of a reddish purplish hue to it. That's a neat color, but that's not what I want on my rods. So I'm going to put it in for another 20 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Let's see what that does. Okay, let's buff it off. You know what? That finish is almost jet black. It's got a little bit of a red hue to it, but I bet another 10 or 15 seconds in it would turn it coal black. Now, the reason I went through the last process is just to show you that you can play with the exposure times. You do not have to follow directions on this strictly. This is a really, really forgiving and easy to use formula. Multiple exposures times, short periods, you can still achieve any color you want. You can get anything from a reddish blue to a midnight blue to a jet black to a hidden green to anything you want. You just have to play with it. One suggestion, when you do play with these exposure times to get different colors, write down exactly what you do. Then don't count out loud like I did. Use a timer and set your exposure times exactly. This will pay dividends in the long run. Well, that's it. That's how to use the RL Nunley bluing formula. It's simple, it's safe. You'll notice I didn't use gloves. I would recommend that you use gloves, not because the formula is unsafe, but because there are body oils on your hands that will leave prints on your blued product and leave flaws. So here we are at the end of this tutorial. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn this camera around and I'm going to give you a short and quick tour of my shop. Okay, the lighting's bad in here. I need to replace some bulbs, but this is my computer numeric controlled bamboo mill. There's the monitor that will post my programs up as I cut the strips for every rod. And this is my old Logan lathe. I bought this from another rod maker and I've made some modifications to it. It really is a great little lathe and super accurate. Of course, when you have a lathe, you have to have thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of toys to go along with it. This is my pride and joy, a Bridgeport mill. This helps me make tools and make parts that many other rod makers just don't have the capability to do. And in the background next to the Bridgeport is a small grizzly wood lathe. This little wood lathe makes all of my reel seat fillers. This is my wrapping station. You can buy some really nice wrapping stations, but I made this one about 30 years ago and it has served me well. Alongside it is a stack of Sterilite boxes for silk thread, several blanks just about to the point of having ferrules put on them. Around here, my rod turner, chemicals, my guide sticks that I use to measure my guide placement, and my varnish setup. My basic varnish box is made out of melamine boards with Lexan glass on the front. The Lexan can be rubbed with a silk cloth to attract all the dust out of the varnish area. The motors themselves are operated by a computer numeric control controller. This gives me the ultimate in speed control in drawing my rods out of the varnish. And that's about it for the shop, or at least all I'm going to show you for today. Now it's time for me to go down to the house and find something to eat for lunch. Have a great day, and wishing you all straight strips.